What happens when a small island nation stands face to face with the world's most powerful country? Cuba just made a move that could change everything, and it's happening right now. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a major development that's unfolding in real time between the United States and Cuba. After months of escalating threats from President Donald Trump, Cuba's leadership has just made a stunning announcement that could reshape the relationship between these two nations. But here's the thing, the situation is far more complicated than it appears on the surface. Let's break down what's really happening. So here's what went down. On Thursday, Cuba's President Miguel Díaz-Canel made a televised address that was broadcast across television, radio, and YouTube. And the setting? He stood in front of a life-sized photograph of Fidel Castro holding a rifle from the 1959 revolution. Symbolic? Absolutely. In his speech, the 65-year-old president said something that caught the world's attention. Cuba is willing to talk to the United States, but, and this is a big but, only without pressure or preconditions. Now, this might sound like an olive branch, but Díaz-Canel didn't mince words about what Cuba has been experiencing. He accused the U.S. of waging intense media campaigns of slander, hatred, and psychological warfare against his country. He's essentially saying, "We'll talk, but we're not backing down." The timing of this announcement is crucial. Cuba has been under mounting pressure, facing what Díaz-Canel called energy persecution and financial persecution, along with what he described as an intensification of the U.S. blockade through coercive measures. To understand why Cuba is making this move now, we need to look at what's been happening behind the scenes. President Trump has been ramping up pressure on Cuba in recent months, and it's been relentless. Just days ago, on Sunday, Trump told reporters something interesting. He said, "Cuba is a failing nation. It has been for a long time, but now it doesn't have Venezuela to prop it up. So we're talking to the people from Cuba, the highest people in Cuba, to see what happens. I think we're going to make a deal with Cuba." Wait, so Trump is suggesting talks are already happening? This is where it gets interesting because officially, Cuba just announced they're willing to talk. Are secret negotiations already underway? We'll come back to that. But Trump hasn't just been talking. He's been taking action. Last month, he signed an executive order threatening additional tariffs on any country that sells oil to Cuba. Think about that for a second. He's not just targeting Cuba directly, he's going after anyone who helps them. And then there's the Venezuela connection. On January 3rd, the U.S. military captured Nicolas Maduro, Venezuela's president and Cuba's traditional ally. This was a seismic event. Venezuela has been Cuba's economic lifeline for years, providing crucial oil supplies. With Maduro now in U.S. custody, Cuba has lost its biggest supporter. Trump even claimed that Mexico had agreed to stop shipping oil to Cuba at his request. However, and this is important, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has flat out rejected that claim. So there's already some confusion about what's actually happening versus what Trump says is happening. Now, here's why Cuba might be willing to come to the negotiating table, even if they're trying to maintain their dignity about it. The situation on the island is dire. Cuba is in the middle of an economic crisis that's hard to overstate. We're talking about people begging in the streets and literally searching through garbage bins for food. Hyperinflation has destroyed the value of state salaries and pensions. Imagine working your entire life only to have your pension become essentially worthless. And then there are the power outages. As of Thursday, the entire eastern region of Cuba was offline, no electricity. These aren't brief blackouts. Widespread outages have been continuing for an extended period. A Havana-based businessman who's worked with the Cuban government for over 25 years told reporters, "They are out of options. There are strong rumors of talks already underway in Mexico. So behind the public posturing, there might already be back-channel negotiations happening. This would make sense. Cuba needs relief and fast. Cuba isn't completely isolated, and Díaz-Canel made sure to mention that in his speech. He said he's received messages from the presidents of China and Russia, along with many other leaders from around the world. According to the Cuban president, these leaders expressed their support, commitment, and determination to continue collaboration and cooperation with Cuba and Venezuela. So while the U.S. is tightening the screws, Cuba is reminding everyone that it still has friends, powerful friends. China and Russia both have interests in maintaining relationships with Cuba, whether for strategic positioning in America's backyard or as a matter of principle in opposing U.S. hegemony. This creates a complex geopolitical chessboard. Any deal between the U.S. and Cuba would need to account for these other relationships and what they mean for regional balance of power. In his speech, Díaz-Canel was honest about what comes next for ordinary Cubans, and it's not pretty. He said Cuba will need to take measures that, while not permanent, will require effort. Translation: things are going to get harder before they get better. Cuba's deputy foreign minister, Carlos Fernández de Cosío, was even more direct in an interview with the news agency F. It's not easy. It's difficult for the government and very difficult for the population as a whole. The Cuban government is essentially preparing its people for increased hardship while simultaneously trying to negotiate a way out. They're being squeezed from multiple directions of the U.S. embargo, the loss of Venezuelan support, their own economic mismanagement, and now Trump's additional pressure tactics. So where does this leave us? We have a fascinating and fluid situation developing. Cuba has publicly stated it's willing to negotiate, but only on equal terms without preconditions. The U.S. president says he thinks a deal will happen. Secret talks may already be underway in Mexico. Venezuela might still be trying to help Cuba despite its own crisis. And China and Russia are watching closely, ready to maintain their influence. The next few weeks could be crucial. Will Trump's pressure campaign force Cuba to make concessions it's resisted for 60 years? Or will Cuba find a way to navigate these treacherous waters while maintaining its sovereignty and political system? One thing is certain: the Cuban people are caught in the middle, facing very real consequences regardless of how the political chess game plays out. What do you think? Should the U.S. and Cuba negotiate? What would a fair deal look like? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear different perspectives on this. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more in-depth coverage of global events as they unfold. And click the notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.